we have to find a way that like the music kind of rolls in at the same time, because as soon as it's done, I'm like, Wepa. Good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Christina's favorite day of the week. Hello, Dorothea. I see you. Good evening. Thank you guys for being here as always. I see our numbers going up already. Thank you for joining us tonight. You know that I love Tuesdays because I get to share them with all of you and interesting guests. So the last time we were here, we had such a great time. Me and Ray, we were keeping it reals, but then Facebook played us and threw us off. But you can still check it out on YouTube because it was an amazing evening. So go back there and do that. As per, always want to remind folks why we are here this evening, because if it weren't for our mission, we wouldn't be here. So as a reminder to all who are watching, if you or someone you know is dealing with any form of domestic violence, whether it's a friend, a family member, a coworker, even a foe, it takes 2 minutes to make sure you have them reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline right there at 1-800-799-7233. We have the Philadelphia one at 1-800-866-723-3014. Thank you guys so much again for being here. Virginia and Christina, I see you. Thank you and good evening. We have an exciting guest for me. I say exciting because I realize what domestic violence is like, right? We know this. I've lived through it. I've gone through it. And I can't even think of how one extreme would take me to another. Tonight's guest is a survivor of domestic violence, but she is now a firearms instructor. I thought that was freaking amazing. I am super excited to hear her story, to hear more about her and her company that she started that is not only in Philadelphia, but is also in Georgia. So I'm excited to bring on for the first time, Dannielle Dupree. Let's welcome her, guys. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good.
You're exciting. So are you in Philly right now or are you in Georgia?
I'm actually in Georgia right now.
Wow. All right. Well, before we get into all the stuff that you do, tell us about Dannielle. What makes you you?
Okay, so I am a mother of 3 boys.
Nice.
I also work at the hospital. I do LPN work. And then, of course, as we talked about, I'm a domestic violence survivor. And I'm also a firearms instructor.
Wow. So you went from one thing to like all this other stuff. So I have one girl. You have 3 boys.
I have 3 boys,
How
yes.
different is that? Woo! How different that is from raising one little girl. I'm sure you have stories that can go for a long way. So you're a firearms instructor and you're a nurse. Lord Jesus. So you see a lot of different things. So
Yeah.
before we get into the firearms, which is really exciting for me to talk about, tell us a little bit about your domestic violence journey. So how young were you? When did it begin? How long was it?
So my domestic violence story actually goes back all the way to when I was a little kid.
Oh,
So
wow.
I actually grew up in an abusive home. My dad was an alcoholic, and him and my mom used to argue and fight all the time. And I would jump into their situation thinking that I was stronger than my mother, and sort of, take the pain for her. As about, I think started doing that maybe around 9 years old.
Wow.
So I was very young. From there, I grew up, kids, they'd be like, oh, I'll never go through that as an adult and whatever. And then I happened to get married. My father had passed away. So I felt like at the time, the person I was with, he was like my life except for my kids. So I really trusted him. And he actually was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he had got shot. So he actually got shot in his heart. And luckily he survived. He was in a coma. He survived. And then after that, he just wasn't the same. He had so much pain. He was taking Percocets, lots of other, painkillers, but also, his self-esteem wasn't the same.
Yeah.
He didn't feel like he was the man he used to be. It just happened around that time. I finished school. So now I was doing nursing full time. So I was making, a good amount of money and I was doing good, but to me, we were doing good.
Yeah.
But to him, I was doing better. So as time went on, it became like pretty much like a jealousy thing. And I just became, his punching bag pretty much for him not feeling good about himself. So, yeah.
How long did you stay in the marriage?
I was actually still in a marriage, let me see, 2012 to 4 years.
4 years.
I
Okay.
stayed in marriage for 4 years, but I had two kids at that time.
Mhm.
Um, we lived at the same home. You know, it was just, he was what I was used to. I also, the nurse in me, I was always scared that if I left, he wouldn't be able to take care of himself, and stuff like that. It sort of weighs on your mind. Like if, he dies, I feel like it's on me. Um, that's before you even get to a point of trying to protect yourself and something happening. It's
Yeah.
just me knowing his health wasn't good at all. So
Yeah, our maternal instincts pop in, and we want to be the ones who kind of essentially save them or protect
yeah,
them. We're not really thinking of who's protecting me from them type of thing.
exactly.
So I
Yeah,
think that's a lot of there's so many reasons why people stay, right? And people are always like so shocked. And there's always a never factor, right? You said that already. You said when you were younger, you witnessed it. And as you got older, you thought to yourself, oh, I'll never tolerate
I'll
that.
never. Yeah,
Right. I think that's a huge part of a lot of people staying in their relationships. It's also something that I'm constantly saying when I'm on here in previous shows all the time. I'm always saying never say never. I
yeah,
think that our journey started. You and I just met because you hit me up on Instagram, and I was like, "Woo!" Like taken back by your story and what it is that you do.
hmm
But our organization began from a documentary. We started a documentary in honor of someone that we lost, who lost her life to domestic violence, and that's something that was similar from all three of us who were in the documentary. Each one of us, at some point in our lives, had said, "This ain't never going to happen to me. Never going to deal with domestic violence." Right? And think as just as little girls and as strong-willed teenagers, we're always like, nobody can put their hands on me. Nobody's going to touch
right,
me.
right,
And that's something I go out to schools and I talk and I go to different, committee groups and just different places. And that's the biggest thing that I see within the community. They're always like, well, I would never tolerate that. Why'd you stay for so long? And I'm like, I respect your opinion, but never say never. Because
yeah,
all of us women who you now perceive as strong women at some point in our lives, we said never as well. So that was one thing that I just took from what you said because you were young, you witnessed it, and then you got older and you're like, never. But then it
mm,
did happen. I think
yep,
it's also interesting that you're in the medical field and that you pointed out something that's super important. This person was injured. So in your mind, it was like, I have to care for him. If I leave, then what happens? Like, I kind of
yeah,
feel like it's my fault if he gets sick or
yeah.
something happens to him. So I'm sure that weighed on you for a long time. So
Yeah.
how much time do you think from when the initial abuse began to the moment that you finally said, I'm not doing this anymore? Did it take, or second part of the question, was there something that happened that you were like, all right, I'm done. I'm not doing it.
So for me, when the abuse started, because it was mental at first, it was mental, it was verbal, it was financial, then it became physical. So by the time it became physical, I would say in my mind, I was still sort of defending it, right? It was sort of like, oh, it's the Percocets. He needs help. This isn't who he is. And then it was also, oh, he don't touch my babies. He's a great dad. It's like, so it wasn't the same abuse that I dealt with as a kid. So
Mhm.
it sort of made me justify it a little bit. Like he's not touching my kids. My kids are safe. They don't know what I'm going through. I'm being strong and I'm dealing with it and I'm keeping it from them. So it took me about a good year to get just through that. Then from there, I started to see that my kids were really affected by it, even though they weren't actually abused. But I would think that my oldest son would sleep, and then a couple days later or something like that, he would just come out and it would be like, "Oh, you were screaming the other night," and and stuff like that. And I was like, "Oh, he hears me." And then a little argument would happen to this point where it wasn't even really that extreme, and he would
Mhm.
like bust out crying. I was like, "Oh my God, like what's wrong?" But it was because now he's starting to be affected by it without me even realizing that it was affecting him. Then my younger son at the time, when we would argue and things would get bad,
Mhm.
um, I guess because he was the baby, like my ex-husband would go and grab him to sort of get a reaction from me. Like, oh, I'm taking him and I'm leaving. and I would like be crying and screaming, and my son would just be so calm, and I just sort of felt like it was becoming normal to him. And that scared me as well, because I didn't want him to think, that was normal.
Yeah.
So even though he was only maybe 1 or 2 at the time, it still was, you could tell the difference just between my 2 boys alone. So
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I finally got to the point where I was like, I got to start figuring out, a way to get away. But like I tell people all the time when I talk about my story, it's not as simple as people think. It's not like you wake up one morning and say, I'm tired of this, and you just leave out the door. You have to have a plan, especially if you have children. I couldn't just go to any shelter and stay, because I could have been putting my kids in more danger. Because at the time I was in danger, but to me, they weren't. They weren't being physically hurt, right? So I didn't want to put them in a shelter or something where somebody might, something might happen. We couldn't live on the streets. I had to figure out a plan. I needed to find a way to save money while he was still taking money from me. So I had to figure out, how do I, be able to say, oh, here, take my money or whatever, but still have money to be saving to move. So it was just a lot of planning. I had to leave when he wasn't home. I had to, what do I really need? And like sneak pack certain stuff without him noticing that things were packed. So, when the time was right, I could just up and go. So
I mean, you had a plan. You had a plan.
I had a plan. Yeah.
See, I'm taking from everything that you're saying. I'm like, woo, you banking on a lot of stuff here, which is a good thing. I think we've had a lot of repetitive guests because people like enjoy to have them on. They see them and they're used to them. But I love when there's new guests on and we all like kind of regurgitate the same thing. We're all saying the same thing because I think it's important for people who are watching, not only people who are new that are watching, but people who have watched for a while now and maybe sitting home. I've been in the instance where I've been on this show and there's people who we hang up, they don't see anything. They're never in comments. You don't even know that they're there, but then they inbox me and they're like, oh, I find it difficult to leave, or, oh, and so let me go back. So I kind of like go through everything you're saying, just so I was taking it in. So the first thing is, it's huge. I want everybody to hear me say this, right? You said you didn't think that your children were seeing it. In your mind, something that you thought to yourself was, as long as he's not hurting my babies, they're good. They're okay. But people don't realize, right? Even though you think they're okay, they're not okay. And kids are more, they're more what is the word I'm looking for? They're more conscious of things going on than we believe them to be.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have nothing that they say. They just kind of internalize it and it hurts them, right? They're kids and it hurts them. So they kind of start to act out in different ways. And then there's like your son who came to you and was like, you were screaming the other day. And you're like, he heard that. I lived through the same thing. I thought a lot of my verbal abuse and mental abuse that I dealt with in relationships after the physical abuse, it was the same type of situation. Like my daughter, I would think, well, we're arguing in the other room, but she doesn't hear, so it's okay. Now it's years later. She's going to be 16, so obviously she's very aware. She's told me, oh, I heard it all. Like I knew everything he said to you. I knew every time you cried, I heard you cry through the wall. And we don't realize that because in our minds, we think we're in a different room, we're whispering, or I'll go outside to argue with him.
Right.
But they're hearing it, they're seeing it, and we just don't realize that they are.
Yeah.
So that's a huge factor. So after you left, which is I say it's the most difficult thing, right? I don't know about you, but for me, that's the hardest part once you're gone.
Right.
After you left, was there something that he continued to do? Did he try to reach out? Did he look for you? Like, was there any type of contact when you first left?
So when I first moved, I ghosted. He went somewhere one day. I packed up my truck and I was gone. Right. I moved. I had another place. I already signed a lease. I was gone. I had already, like, I'm getting the kids in school. I'm like, doing everything. And then, yes, I didn't change my phone number. The reason why was at the end of the day, I still had that fear. I still had that fear of, hey, what if he finds me? And then I would rather him write me and sort of threaten me and I know where he is than just don't know. It's like the unknown. It was more scary than him just coming out and saying, hey, I saw you or whatever. So I sort of kept the same number, but I just tried to, I didn't answer his calls. I just ignored him, made sure he couldn't track me, any crazy stuff. And I just sort of lived like that for a while until one of his friend's kids was at my son's school. And he's like, oh, I saw such and such the other day. And I'm like, what? And then from there, I already knew. I'm like, it's gonna go crazy. I'm like, it's gonna be, he's gonna know the school, so he's gonna start looking around that location, and it definitely happened. He was like, I know, my son is at such and such school. You must live around that location. And he was just driving around, and one time he took a picture of me, like literally at the market. And then and I was trying to be so aware at the time, so I was like so paranoid, right? I'm like looking around everywhere and I'm uneasy, and it still wasn't enough. It still wasn't enough. He was still sending me pictures of myself. He was still sending me pictures of my kids, and I was going to school, and I'm like, don't let anybody take my kids, and watch my kids. And it was just a lot. So it ended up being like every year to every 2 years I was moving, because I would run into someone, he would find me, and then he would break into my houses. He was flattening my tires. It was beyond stalking. So he went and signed divorce papers. They couldn't even give him the divorce papers because he wasn't at one location.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
it was bad. Yeah.
So how many years has it been since then?
So since the last time he actually stalked me, it's been about 2 years.
Wow.
It's been about 2 years. I did run into him one time last year. But by then I was a whole different person, right? And I say that because I knew about situational awareness. I knew about self-defense. I knew about just the gun laws. I knew about, everything that I should know to be able to protect myself. So my mind state was different than when, I was just this terrified woman that was trying to, find a way out. So when I ran into him the last time, it was crazy because I was coming in late at night and I was walking down the street, and as women, sometimes our feet hurt. I had shoes on, my feet was hurting. I took my shoes off, had my shoes in my hand. I had my firearm on me. I had my phone. I was walking down the street. I tried to be aware, so I had my key, ready to put it in the door. And I just hear running. I hear running. I hear running. I'm like, what is that noise? So at first I'm thinking like it's going the other way, and then I'm like, no, it's coming towards me. So I drop everything and I turn around with my firearm, and it was him. I never thought it would be him. I thought it could be anyone else. I thought it would be, just a stranger trying to rob me, or even, a runner, anybody. And it was him. And it threw me off, right? And no matter how much training I had, how much I tried to prepare myself, I still wasn't prepared. It was still this person that I used to love, my kid's father. It was still so many thoughts, going through my mind at that time. But his mind also wasn't the same. It was like he sort of knew that I changed. So his whole plan was for me to shoot him, and then us both to, me to go to jail, pretty much. And he sort of was like egging me on, trying to like, provoke me as much as he could. And then he like sort of got on the floor, he turned his back to me, and he's like, if you don't shoot me, I'm going to turn around, I'm going to attack you, and then I'm going to shoot you. And he's like, that's your choices. Like, you shoot me and you go to jail, or I turn around and I get that gun and I'm going to kill you. And it was like, and I'll probably get away with it. Yeah, so I'm like so in my head, but at the same note, my heart is, going crazy. I'm barely, breathing normally, and I'm trying to get my thoughts together, and I'm trying to remember all my training, like, like, girl, like, you prepare for this for a long time, and it still was like, all right, I just really got to be on point. Like, if he turns around to attack me, I have to defend myself, because I cannot let him get this firearm from me and take my life. So I'm trying to prepare for that moment, and then a car goes by, and then someone comes outside, and then I run. That's it. I run away, and thank God I got away. He was texting me that same night, and he's like, "I'm gonna see you again," and I was like, "Oh, I'm gone." And then literally, what? Not even a month after that, I was moving to Georgia. I was gone. Yeah. So I was like, I just can't, like, I don't want to deal with it. I always thought like he would be attacking me and then I would be protecting myself. I never thought he would want me to shoot him and go to jail, like, so it was like I prepared, but I wasn't prepared in that, in that aspect. So,
So let me tell you that. Let me ask you this.
yeah,
So, wow, you just blew me away a lot. But let me ask you this just because I've seen your website, I've seen your Instagram, and you're here.
right.
Um, how are like, does he know that you've moved? Does he know that you're an arms instructor now? Like, does he know everything about you?
He knew that I was an arm instructor then because he was still stalking me and never stopped. He
Okay.
just got to a point I had, the PDF, the protection orders, I had everything because even though I could tell you so many stories about how the police and them papers did not help me at all, but as learning about self-defense, I needed that paper trail. I needed to be able to say he was stalking me. I reported this. He did that. As women, we're so ashamed to go to the police and say, "Oh, he did this to me," or even a friend. You know what I mean? Because it's so embarrassing.
True.
Um, but being
Look at
able to take
you.
take them pictures,
It's
being
you.
able to take them pictures and let people know like this happened to me is actually all the evidence you need if you ever have to really defend yourself.
Wow.
So
You look pretty fierce holding that gun, girl. So, wow, we're already 22 minutes in, and I'm just intrigued. So you've done all of this, right? So everybody that's watching, we've heard your journey where you
right.
got there. How the heck did you become a gun instructor? Like, how did this happen?
So, yeah, we know about my abuse part. I started being stalked to the point of like I started to feel like there was no way out. I started to feel like, you think them dark thoughts of like, I can't do this anymore. I was going to groups, I was going to counseling, but I just felt like nobody really understood how much it was impacting my life. I was moving every year to every 2 years. My kids weren't making friends. They couldn't be at the same school where I'm jumping them around from one place to another place. I even moved in places that weren't the best to try to, hide, to get away. Like he won't find me here. Um, so it was becoming a lot. It was suffocating for me. Um, and then finally I was just like, after asking and asking, like, what can I do? Um, I just started looking at like hand to hand self defense classes.
Mhm.
So I'm like, all right. So if he attacks me, if I know how to defend myself and I could get away, like I'm just thinking of ways like I do not want this man to kill me, like I don't want him to kill me. So I want to think of ways where I can defend my life and just to get away in case he finds me, because he's going to find me. And then from there, it was just so much with hand to hand. It's so close and personal. Um, and you have to have them moves exactly how they're taught. And if not, then, there's a chance of anything happening, him grabbing you and choking you. So I just wanted to be as efficient as I could, but I also felt like I was having such a hard time imagining me and him on the floor and we're doing all these moves, and I was like, I don't want him that close. I don't want to wait until he has me in a chokehold to be able to try to save my life. I don't want him to even be able to come that close to me. So from there, it was like, oh, well, try stun guns, try knives. But all that is still very close. Um, a stun gun, you're really close to someone and you're tasing them, and then a knife, that's like so personal. You hear that all the time when people get stabbed. They're like, oh, it's a violence of passion, and because it's so personal. And I was like, I don't want that type
Yeah.
of defense. So from there, people started telling me about tasers, that you can like throw this taser at somebody and it shoots out and it shocks him. But I'm like, what if I miss? And they're like, oh, you got to reload and you got to, and I'm like, that is too much. You know what I
Fun.
mean? So from there, it was just like, oh, well, what about handguns? It was like I was just going down the line. And then I did have firearm trauma. So when I was with my ex, one time I was talking, and I was just trying to, I guess we do it to sort of be like, listen, like I'm getting tired. I'm gonna leave. Like, so you can change or you could go get help. If you don't get help, I'm leaving. But to him it was almost like a threat, right? So one day he played it off like everything was good and he said, oh, we're gonna go out, we're gonna go for a ride. I'm like, okay. And we're out and he just takes me to this street and we're just walking and he pulls out a firearm. I'm like, okay, like what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to shoot because I had some people that were being sketchy around the house and I want you to be able to defend yourself. So I'm like, okay, I'll learn, whatever. Like just trying to, first of all, I didn't want to say the wrong thing. So I'm just like, okay, let's do it. um so I'm thinking like he's telling me like, oh, you hold it like this and you do this and you do that. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, I want you to try to hit the bottle. So I'm like looking like what bottle, and I'm like looking and I don't see any bottle. I'm like, I do not, like, I'm like, what are you talking about? And then just bam, like he literally shoots right next to me, and I have no ear protection. I have it's so loud. I'm just like, and my ears were ringing, and I just remember like thinking in my head, like he shot me. Like did he shoot me? Like am I dying? Like it was just so terrifying for me. I'm like looking down, but at the same note, it's like you don't want to know. It's like, and I'm like what just happened? Like I'm trying to like catch myself, and he's like, oh yeah, he was like, Stop acting like a punk." Like he's like, "Oh, I was just trying to show you how it sound." And then he thought something, "Oh yeah, but if you ever leave me, I'll definitely shoot you. Don't you
Mhm.
ever threaten to leave me again."
Mhm.
So he knew what he was doing. And from there, I was terrified of firearms. I would hear like the sound out even on the TV, and I'm like, it was just something that really traumatized me for a while.
Yeah.
So when I decided, like, all right, firearms, right, and that was like my last choice. When I decided firearms, I found an instructor, and I was like, listen, I need to just go in the range and sit there, and like I need to hear these shots, and when I'm able to deal with them and manage mentally,
Mhm.
um, and hear instruction while listening to these shots, then I can try, the rest. And he was
Mhm.
like, "Oh, you sure that's what you want to do?" And I'm like, "That's what I want to do." You know what I mean? Like, I need to do that.
Mhm.
And for a while, I paid just to go to the range, just to sit and hear gunshots. I didn't shoot. I didn't do anything. It was just me adjusting to the sound. Um, and then eventually, the sound was like, okay, like it was empowering. It
Mhm.
became like, oh, like it's it depends on the person behind it, right? It's not the firearm, it's the person using it. So once I mentally got to that point where I learned like it's not the tool, it's the person. And if I'm the person and I'm trying to save my life or save my kid's life, then it's the right thing to do. Once I mentally accepted that, then I was able to take instruction and learn how to actually use it and how it functions. And from there, I just started doing firearm training for myself. And then after training with an instructor, I did train at first with a male instructor. I feel like, there are some very good male instructors out there. But for me, it was just a little aggressive. And it was sort of like, it's not that hard, just do it. And it was like, you don't know what I'm going through,
Yeah.
and I just felt like I'm just gonna get a membership and I'm gonna go to the range by myself. You know, I know the steps, I know the safety, I know what to do. I'm gonna buy my first firearm and I'm just gonna go to the range by myself. And I started doing that, and then from there I started to perfect it. You know, became really good at my shots. I was hitting where I wanted to hit. And then I started seeing other women at the range. I'm like, hey, like, how you learn how to shoot like that, you know? And
Yeah.
I'm trying to help them. And then from there, they're like, are you an instructor? I'm like, no. They're like, you need to be, you know? And from there, I was like, you know, let me look into it, you know? Then it just became something I was like, this is what I want to do. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. I have so much that I want to say and ask, but I'm going to do as we do at the halfway point. We're already here. I can't believe it, but that's what happens when you're having fun. Just a
Yeah.
reminder for those who are joining us right now, anyone who has come and we did not say hello to, Virginia, Yamilitsi, Islia, and Marilyn, and everyone else who is watching, welcome and thank you for being here. We have the owner of Defensive Unicorns here. Her name is Dannielle Dupree, if you're just joining us, and she is amazing. If you just are listening in to us, she's telling us our story of how she went from a domestic violence victim to a survivor, and now she is a nurse, a mama, but most importantly, while we're here tonight, she is a firearms instructor. So to remind you folks, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is scrolling across the screen, 1-800-799-7233. For those watching from Philadelphia, we also have the Philadelphia number as well, 1-866-723-3014. Please reach out to them. And remember, you can also dial 911. If they are not quick enough, you can ask for a pizza, and a licensed professional on the other end will know exactly what to do to help you. Man, so your story, hello, Lynette, thanks for joining us. Your story is wild, and I'm very, very intrigued. So you said so much. So you essentially, as crazy as it sounds, he kind of put you into this, right? Like he brought the gun to you and he put you around guns, and it kind of originally put it in your head like, okay, wait a minute, I was scared of this, but now I need to get away with it. So that's his first mistake.
Right.
Good for you. Good for you. Um, the second thing is, so you said that you had the trauma from it. So because it was in such close vicinity, you know, you were bothered by it, but you finally were like, I guess it's like anything that's trauma. Sometimes we have to sit in the trauma so
Yeah.
that we can help ourselves improve. You have someone on here who's giving you some love. Um, they're in the comment section, and we're going to put up some comments soon, folks. So believe me, I'm encouraging you folks. If you have anything you want to say to her, any questions, please do so that we can put them on screen and we can interact with her. So you learned it. You went out there. First of all, I'll say this because all my questions are going to stem from this. So about almost 18, 19 years ago, I was a Philadelphia probation officer, and I was terrified of guns.
Yeah.
Terrified.
Hmm.
When I stopped becoming a probation officer, when I stopped that, that career, I did not ever want to see a gun again. It just wasn't for me. It
Yeah.
wasn't. Because I do what I do, I have a lot of support from my friends who were police officers, and they're often telling me that I should carry a weapon, right? And I'm always like, I'm scared of guns. Like, I don't want them around me. I don't want to touch them. And a lot of that comes from my abuser, right? He used to sit a gun on the kitchen table, and people would say, why do you leave to go to work and come back? Because that gun, even though he never picked it up, was a sign. It was a symbol for him to let me know, like, it's sitting there, but
Right.
I'll use it if I have to use it. So I was always scared. So as time went
Right.
on, it was something that I'm frightened of. And I still to this day have people who tell me, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I'm still like, I'm scared. So as a woman going in there, first of all, I applaud you because I'm terrified of guns.
Thank
Um,
you.
but it gave you strength after a while sitting there listening. And you also learned like it's not the gun that's really the weapon, it's the person behind it, it's the weapon,
Yeah.
right? It's scary.
Yeah.
So then you said you started to see more women, and women were out there doing it, and then you said, they were looking at you when they were. So once you made that switch from I've
Hmm.
got past this trauma, I've gotten past being scared of this gun, now I'm out there, I'm by myself, and I'm in there killing it, no pun
Right.
intended. You were doing it. So how did you stop and say, I'm doing this? And then once you did, right? It's a lot of questions, but that's why I make you keep talking. Once you did start doing it, now that you do it, what do you see your population? Is it more women? Is it more men? And are a lot of them like victims of some form of violence? And you see that they're doing this now because of that. I know it's a lot to compact, but just give me some feedback on like the people that you see, maybe things you learned from them. and while you're doing it now that you're an instructor?
All right. So when I first started, like I said, I was going to the range. I was seeing just women shooting. They were having a hard time. They would come watch me shoot, and they're like, "Yo, like, why is it your hand shaking? Why aren't you doing this?" And I'm like, "Listen, I was there. I make it 100%. Like I tell them, like, I was, I didn't start off this way. This is a journey for me to get comfortable and be able to hit my target and really pay attention to things that I was doing wrong to fix my shots.
Mhm.
So as I explained that, I said it's like mental, it's not just the physical. Some people are like, oh, I need to lift weights. Like, yeah, lifting weights can help you with holding a firearm, but it's more than that, and then it touched me that I want to teach people. I want to teach people that it is more than just the physical when it comes to shooting firearms. I'm like, I want to be able to explain to them, where you mentally should be, and talk about safety and how important safety is, where it's not just like I teach you how to shoot a gun and now you know how to shoot. Like, I want you to know the laws behind it. So
Mhm.
it was so much more than just helping people in the range. Then I would see certain women in there with like their husbands or their boyfriends, and it was that same aggressive behavior. It was like,
Mhm.
oh, it's not that hard, and why do you keep letting it go? And blah 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 blah. And I'm like, oh my god, like she's never gonna learn like that.
Mhm.
And I would like sort of wait, because I did want to, respect my place. I
Yeah.
would sort of wait till it was like an opportunity to be like, hey, like, like if you want to come to the range another time with me, let me know. I can help you. Like, or if they would walk off, I would say, hey, like just a pointer, like do this instead of this, and and try to help. And then people would come to me later and like, thank you so much. So once I officially became an instructor, it was like, okay, now I want to do all that amazing stuff that I couldn't do just helping people in the range. It's loud in there. I didn't have a classroom to really teach. It was more like me just helping. So now I got like this platform where I can sit people down for, a good hour, and we could go over safety. We could go over the gun laws, because you run into so many people, especially lately. Think about like the news. We had so many women who go buy firearms and then they shoot someone and go to jail.
Yeah.
Whole time this person has been abusing her for years, but there's no proof, there's no paperwork. And then maybe she went about it wrong. She went and ran towards him or chased him, but that's someone not knowing what the law is and how it can work for you. So by them not knowing that information, they're making these big mistakes, but it doesn't mean that they're not a victim. you know
Yeah.
but in the news they make it seem like, oh, this crazy lady shot this guy, and there's a story behind it, but without the proof, you're sitting in a jail cell. So I wanted to be able to explain to people about that. I wanted to be able to explain to people about, like I said, the safety. A lot of people don't, they hide their firearms from their kids, right? They'll have a firearm in the house, they'll hide it in the shoebox, up in the closet. Like, no, you don't want to do that. You actually want your kids to be aware of your firearm, because then it takes out that curiosity of, yeah, of, oh, I found mom's gun. It takes that away. You want to teach them safety as soon as possible. Of course, every child is different, but knowing your child, when they're ready. You want to be the one to introduce your child to firearms, not someone on the streets or them mysteriously finding it in the closet. So it's just so much stuff that needs to be taught when it comes to firearm training. So I really just wanted to go from there. Most of my students are women.
Mhm.
There are a lot of women who want to be taught by women, and I feel like that's fully understandable. There's certain things like getting your nails done and shooting, right? And wearing certain clothes that's sort of different from a male to a female, right? How we carry. When I first when I first decided to own a firearm and be have a concealed carry permit, right? I was like, oh, I gotta wear sweatpants every day and baggy clothes, but it's not true. I can still look cute. I have posted videos in a wedding dress. I have posted videos in the evening dress.
Oh, wow.
I have posted videos and all types of stuff. Just out and about. and still carrying my firearm to show them like you're capable of doing it. Yeah, you might have to buy a couple different holsters, but at the end of the day, you would rather be prepared than underprepared anytime. So just because you look cute doesn't mean you can't be safe. So I try to teach people about that. I try to teach people it's not about, oh, I got my nails, I can't load this firearm right. No, you just have to train. However you live is however you train. If you wear tights every day, then you train in tights every day. You buy belts and you buy holsters that's going to help you be able to carry while you have your tights on. It's like you train how you live, and it's so important as women because I don't feel like you should have to change your whole life. Like, yeah, your mental changes because now I have to be a responsible firearm owner, right? So you don't want to have road rage where you're out there snapping on somebody and they come running towards you and now you got to shoot somebody because they ran in front of you. So you do want to mentally change, but you want to be able to sort of avoid situations that you can. But you don't want to change being feminine. I still want to be a female. I still want to be a woman and be happy about that and proud about that. So I love doing my women classes, my women empowerment classes. I love doing my family classes because we're teaching children. I'm teaching them about safety. Depending on their ages, I can take them out to shoot and get rid of that curiosity where, I had my son, he went to school and he's like, oh, I've been shot a gun. Like, like, oh, I go to the range with my mom. He's not, if somebody was to say, hey, I got a gun at home, he's like, okay. He's not to a point where he's like, oh, I want to go see it because he already been there, done that. So
Wow.
stuff like that really changes, in this world we live in where we got so many children dealing with, violence right now and there's shooting and so much stuff going on. It's like, it's really important.
Yeah.
Once in a while, I'll get a male that will come for a class. I have a couple men that have come for classes, but I think it's just me being a female. I do get more women who my classes. Yeah.
So I'm writing questions as you're speaking. my first. Okay, I'm going to make a statement before I make my question because there's a lot of different people, different variety of people watching, women and men.
Right.
I want to make sure that there may be some things that you said that people will be like, "Oh my God, she said kids." So I want to start by saying we're not promoting guns and we're not saying go out and shoot people.
No.
That's not what this show is about.
No.
Just like Taekwondo and any other type of defense mechanism, this
Right.
is something that we're speaking of because of the conversations that we have surrounding domestic violence. And sometimes we have to learn how to protect ourselves. Even myself, who runs this organization, I've been cautioned by family members. I had a conversation 2 weeks ago with someone I haven't spoken to in so long, and they were like, Chrissy, are you not scared? Like, are you not worried?
Right.
Absolutely, I am. What I talk about is not something everyone enjoys. I also don't make abusers happy with my conversations. So there's a lot of things that I do that are very scary with what I do. So I've always had that brought to my attention. So this is by no means promoting everybody grab a gun and go show your kid. It's not
No.
what it is. So the first question that I ask so that people know, how do you vet these people so that you can make sure that their mental health is straight, so that they're not turning around and just shooting someone? Or like, is there a
Right.
vetting process before people join your class? And then before they even touch a gun, I think you said it, but just in case you didn't, before they even touch a gun, what is it that you go through with them before they even can touch a gun?
Right. So when it comes to vetting, it's really hard because most people who would probably have some underlying stuff going on, they're not going to let you know right away. So what I do is when I have my classes, we always do classroom first, right? So at the classroom, when we're in the classroom, we're talking. I bring up everyday situations and I sort of see how people react to them. So if I bring up, hey, oh, did you see the Uber man that got robbed the other day? It was like, that was crazy. And I already know what I think should legally happen or what I think he should do to protect himself. But I want to know what's your answers. I want to know what you think because you'll find a person who'll be like, oh, he should have just shot them both in the head and this, and the third. And then when you say something like, well, a car isn't worth your life, right? And they're like, what are you talking about? It wasn't going to be my life. It would have been his life. Yeah, but now you're sitting in jail for the rest of your life. So was it worth it? It's
Right.
not worth it. You let that car go. It's material. You let that pocketbook go. You let them shoes go. You let all that go. But your life or your loved one life, that's a different story,
Yeah.
or someone disrespecting you to a way where you have, trauma, someone raping you or physically hurting you to a point where you can't just get over it. Now that's another story. Somebody push you and they take their pocketbook, let them go, Um, but the first thing I teach when it comes to training is avoidance. I tell people if you can run away and you can just avoid a situation, avoid it. I never want anyone to go towards violence. I never want, even if you have your firearm on you and you're the best firearm instructor, shooter, whoever that you are, I never want anyone to go towards violence. That's never the point of even taking training or owning a firearm. So I try to tell people all the time, avoidance is number one. If you can avoid the situation, then avoid it, right? But a lot of times we run into situations we can't avoid. We try to give somebody tries to rob us, and it's like, hey, take everything. And they're like, oh, I want more than what you have in your pockets. Now that's a different story. Now your life is in danger. So there's so many stories now out here where people rob someone blind and then still kill them afterwards.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like your life is in danger. It's not just about, oh, I just want the money out your pockets anymore. So I try to tell people to be open minded to a lot of situations like that.
Mhm.
But at the same note, I still do try to teach them automatically that avoidance is number one. Avoid, avoid, avoid. Now, when you can't avoid, and like I said, your life is on the line, then that's another story. So when people come to classes, we talk about situations like that so I can see where they mentally are. A lot of my students, to be honest, are like, oh, I want to just shoot somebody in the knee, right? I want to learn how to defend myself, so if somebody texts me, I could just shoot them in the knee. And I explain this to people all the time. I understand, to you don't want to take a life, right? So it's like I'm trying to protect myself, but I still don't want that burden on me of I took this person's life. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, you have to also think that you trying to shoot somebody in the knee is a very hard shot. Okay. That person is moving. It's a
Mhm.
very small target. It's more than likely that person is going to attack you. And then if they get your firearm, do you think they're going to be as mindful as you are trying to be for them? So I try to have people in the right mental state before we even go shoot a gun or even, talk about buying a firearm.
Mhm.
So that's number one. They also at the ranges they do background checks, but some people can pass background checks, and
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I do try to talk to all of my students, so I actually have like a mental understanding of even why they're here. I have like a sheet where I say, why are you here today? Like, or if you're going to buy a firearm, why do you need this? What is it for? And then
Mhm.
I'll ask certain questions like, do you think where's the safest place for you to have your firearm? And I'll ask all types of questions so I know mentally where these people are, and then I try to educate them on what they don't know. Now, if somebody just stands out to me and they're like, hey, I have this guy who's stalking me and I need to get rid of him, then I'll be like, hey, like, can you talk to me after class? And then that person, like, we'll skip the training and I'll give you your money back, but I don't think it's a good time for you to take this training.
Yeah.
you know and I understand where she's coming from. I've been there.
Mhm.
I've been to that point when you're tired and you're like, I like, life is killing me, I'm suffocating. But it's way more to it than just getting rid of that person. So I try to explain that as much as I can.
Wow.
Mhm.
You're amazing. I'm just wow. So you have one big comment here from Ileana Acevedo. She
Mhm.
says, I'm interested in getting trained, but like Christina, I'm also very afraid of guns. It terrifies me to think that I could take someone's life if I do something wrong in a desperate moment. Are part of the classes to deal with that. So that was kind of what we just um spoke
Yeah.
about. I think that that's the biggest concern for a lot of people. I think that that's major for me, worry, just being concerned in that retrospect. Even when I was a probation officer, I was like, I don't want to hold a gun. I don't want to think of the thought of ever like killing someone ever.
Right. Right.
And I realized that for self-defense and just to keep yourself safe, sometimes that's what people use as an option. But I think a lot of people are. Um, So one thing I want to point out is that you go over gun laws. I think that's super important because I
Yeah,
think that people need to know that.
yeah,
They need to know that when you take a gun and you do something with it, you definitely need to know what could or could not happen to you.
right.
That's super important because I think that sometimes people say, "Oh, I got a gun license. I got a license to carry," but don't realize that
Yes.
doesn't mean you can kill someone, and that doesn't mean you can just pull it out at any point. So I think that's super
Yeah.
important. So I love it. Yolanda says, "Do you teach the laws of shooting as well, such as when shooting someone, will it be considered self-defense?" That's just what I was enlightening on. So,
Yep. Mhm.
yep,
Yep. Mhm.
exactly what I was saying, Yolanda. We're saying that before anything, she teaches gun laws to everyone, and that's important because you don't want anybody going out there losing their minds with a gun. We are
Yep.
already at the 50 point. We got here really fast. I think that you gave us a lot of amazing information, and I was so pleased to have you on tonight. At the 50 mark, we normally do our time to kind of just reflect by ourselves. I leave you by yourself. Um, I encourage the audience, whoever's watching, if you have any questions, any comments, anything that you have for her, start thinking of them and filling up that chat box because we are almost done through with the night. So you do classes there and you do classes here. How
Yep.
would people go about getting those classes? Do they go to your website? What is it that they do?
So my website is open. The thing about my website is only because right now range times are up and down. They have so much things going on in Philadelphia where the ranges will shut down for certain days, and so it's really hard when it comes to planning. Being I'm flying in from Georgia, I have to make sure the days are set. So what I've been doing is people can always DM me and say, "Hey, I'm looking forward to a class." I'll save your information. The second that a class is approved, where it's already set and scheduled with the range, then I let them know. I just don't like to tell people, "Hey, I'm going to do a class on this day," and then they tell me, "Oh, you can't do it," whatever. So I wait until it's stamped and it's approved, and then I'll send out the information. From there, you just go on my website. You can sign up with PayPal. You can sign up with I think you could use just any credit card, debit card, whatever. You sign up, and then that reserves your seat. So once you pay, that's it. You're into that class. If anything was to happen, you were to get sick or something when you cannot make that class, I do a makeup class, so you will get another chance to make up that class that you missed.
Awesome. Wow. So if you are coming on and you came late and you missed the first half, make sure you go to YouTube to see the first half. Danielle tells us her story, which was very, very intriguing of the abuse that she went through and how she survived it. I think you are phenomenal. I love to give all of my guests their flowers because I think that all of us women need to get that pat on the back and some love. So I think that you're amazing. I love what you're doing. If there is any way, ladies, that we can try to, figure out some time, I'm going to talk to Danielle to see if we can do something. Women and men, because we have women and men that follow us. I would love to do a class for the ladies just to kind of start them off, to get them kind of in that mindset. We all live in Philly right now, most of us. Some people are living other places.
Right.
There's a lot of crime going on, and it's very scary right now in Philly.
Yeah.
So if this is something that we can kind of offer as well as another support, especially to just people who have, an interest in it, if this is something they've taken from today's show and they've decided, wow, that's interesting, I want to do it. Thank you, Danielle, for sharing your story. I'm going to go to the back. I'm going to leave you by yourself.
Okay.
Um, Tell us everything we need to know. Tell us your website, your social media, any way they can find us. Give us your final thought on what you think about today's show or anything surrounding anything we talked about tonight, and then I'll be back.
Okay. So it's me again, Danny. I am from Defensive Unicorns. My Instagram is defensive_unicorns. Look, I'm making sure that's what it is. My website is www.defensiveunicornsllc.com. And you guys, I have my phone number on there listed on Instagram. I am on Facebook, but it's like a side page. So I think you can find it under defensive_unicorns. But even if you find me on Instagram or if you go on my website, you can email me on there. You can text me. If you text me on my website or on my Instagram page, it will text my phone directly. So you will speak to me. Um, And that's it. Like everybody, like even if you're not where you think you need to be able to defend yourself, I will help you get there. And it's not about taking a life, it's really about just being able to save your own. So I'm so grateful that I was able to come on this show and I was able to talk to you guys. I appreciate you guys so much, and I appreciate Christina so much. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I loved it. You were amazing. I love it. I love it. I love it. We're going to send you to the back so that I can give my final thought and some shout outs, some love, and some announcements. And I'm about to call. So excuse me for a second.
All right.
I've been coughing all day. So I'm going to send you to the back. I'll be here for a second, and then we'll bring you back to say goodbye together. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for interacting, for being here tonight. I hope you found it as interesting as I did. I think that Danielle is amazing. I guess I'm more biased as well because I'm a domestic violence survivor. So when I hear stories of other women who have what I call fierra, I kind of fought through that and they're survivors now. I'm super, super big on just being very supportive. I think what she does is phenomenal and I'm super interested in learning more. So if any of you ladies have watched the show tonight, and let me not just say ladies, I keep on having to check myself, ladies and men who are interested in something like this, just a class to kind of familiarize yourself and just find different ways to protect yourselves, please inbox me that interest and I will see if I can get a group together to get her down here and do a class. We can fly her out ourselves just so that we can be a part of it and we can learn a little bit more. I think it's something that it won't hurt anyone to learn more about, especially with all of the violence that's going on today. So thank you so much, Danny. I appreciate you for coming and being here. Some announcements, people, and some reminders. If you do not remember, March 18th is our Love Gala, our third annual Love Gala that as well is always in honor of our survivors. It will be at the beautiful Waterfall Room off of Southampton Road. We are super excited. Our tickets are live, people. So look through all of our social media, our website, everything. It is there. We are ready. Eventbrite. I can't wait. We already have amazing sponsors. We have FASA. We have Lagam Home Care. We have Gomez Law Group, Travel Allure, and a huge thank you and just appreciation to Maria Quiñones Sanchez and Ketsi Lozada for being such major supports of what is going on right now. We are excited for our gala. It is our third one. If you went to the first, it was amazing. If you went to the second, it was phenomenal. And this year is going to be even better. We already have performers. We have awardees for that evening. And of course, we have amazing music by our boy DJ Dro, and we're going to have a phenomenal program for all of you. So if you did not get your tickets, hurry up and do so. Remember, we are going to have an amazing 6 to 7 p.m. VIP cocktail hour that we did not have the first 2 years. Go get yourself some tickets because we're going to have some live music during that cocktail hour and it is going to be phenomenal. Another reminder, it's Christmas time. Our holiday drive is active, folks. We have 4 amazing families. We have women who have been relocated and children who we want to have an amazing Christmas. Thank you, thank you, thank you. First off, to the people who continue to donate, whether it's monetary or gifts or even clothing. I have people inboxing me who say, I have brand new clothing that I would love to give to the families. I have gifts that I have bought. I have people who have just said, I don't like shopping, but I sent you the money on Cash App or whatever. Whatever you feel the most comfortable with. I know some people are not comfortable with monetary and you do not have to. You can actually buy the gift yourself. Just inbox me. I'll give you the ages of the children and we can find a meetup point. You do not need to give us monetary donations, but we do appreciate anything and all for our families during this drive. I think it was an amazing show, people. We got 2 minutes left, so we're going to bring her back to say goodbye, and we'll see you again next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Thank you so much, Boo. You're beautiful. You're amazing and phenomenal. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much for having me.
We're going to get a group together, girl, and we're going to bring you down here. We're going to fly you out here so that you can teach these women and men how to keep themselves safe.
I'm ready.
Thank you so much. Have a good night, all. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.